Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our first early evening RTS events, but held at lunchtime. And we're delighted to see you all. And we are totally and exceptionally lucky to be joined by the acclaimed writer and director, Sally Wainwright. I don't even need to tell you the extraordinary gems that she has created for us, but they obviously include Happy Valley, Last Tango in Halifax, and Gentleman Jack. And we are even more thrilled to have Lucinda Hicks, who is Chief Operating Officer of Endemol Shine UK, to join her in conversation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Lucinda and Sally. And in the next 45 minutes or so, we'll hear from Sally, and then you'll have the chance to ask some questions.
Thanks, Teresa. You're definitely not more thrilled to see me than Sally, who is, as Teresa says, one of the most prominent and brilliant writers. We're very proud to call British, and writers and directors, I should say. I'm a massive fan of all of your work, Sally. So I'm very honoured to have you on. Thank you very much indeed. How are you? How is lockdown treating you?
It's fine. We're very lucky. You know, we live in the middle of rural Oxfordshire and we've got a big garden, you know, I feel guilty really a lot of the time for saying that, you know, it's really not that bad, you know. It's and as a writer you kind of spend most of your time on your own anyway, so you know, as I was saying earlier, I could very happily be a recluse, so this is not really any kind of hardship for me. The hardest thing for me is that my mum is in a care home. So I haven't seen her for 8 weeks, and someone died in their care home last weekend. So she's been tested and she's fine. She's got dementia and she's blind and deaf, but she tested negative. So
gosh, so you're not even able to speak to her remotely, are you?
Sorry,
you're not even able to speak to her remotely, then I assume.
I can't ring her up. It's not. I mean, I could, but I don't. You know, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't work, and so. But you know, the worrying thing is, how did the COVID get in? It's obviously got in with a carer. You know, they're doing their best. They're wearing PPE.
Yeah, one of many questions.
Yeah.
You were also saying that you're using lockdown to grow vegetables, which I was very impressed to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I love gardening, but it's not something I've done for years and years and years, simply because I've not had time, and I'm not always at home, and I'm not home consistently enough to do that kind of thing. So it's been, I've really, it sounds really glib, doesn't it? But I have enjoyed being able to be at home for a consistent period of time.
Yeah. And are you writing more or less, or how does writing fit into this world?
I mean, I've got tons of work to do, but I found it very hard to concentrate. I've written one episode of Gentleman Jack during the whole of lockdown, so it's been, is it 8 weeks now?
Yeah, I think it is 8 weeks now. I think this is week 8.
So that's, for me, that's not really very good. I normally would hope to write an episode of anything within 4 weeks, but Gentleman Jack's different. It's always taken me longer because of the amount of reading involved, reading the diary.
Yeah.
But taking that long to write one episode is just a measure of how it's affected my concentration, I suppose.
It's concentration rather than kind of not having a specific deadline that you're working to.
Yeah, because I take my deadlines very seriously. I self-inflict deadlines. You know, we weren't going to start filming until June anyway, so I was well within my deadlines, but we're now hoping to start filming in September. Whether we will or not, who knows, but that's the plan at the moment. But no, it wasn't. I was talking to my agent about it, and she said, oh yeah, when you've no deadlines it all seems a bit nebulous, but I've always had my own timetable that I always try and stick to, and I think it's the first time ever I've missed a deadline ever.
Really? That's an extraordinary track record.
Yeah.
There are probably lots of writers out there that have sort of had their head in their hands at this moment.
No, I would say seriously deadlines.
But look, I'd love to talk a little bit more about your sort of your inspiration as a writer. How do you describe your own voice in your style?
My own voice, my own style. I suppose I hope it's very down to earth. I hope everything I do feels very authentic. I hope everything I do is funny, even when it's very dark, like Happy Valley. It's always important for me to entertain people.
Yeah.
And for it to feel real, feeling real has always been very important to me. My imagination doesn't kick in really unless something feels real. Like if I haven't got someone's name right, I can't make them speak.
That's really interesting. So when you're creating a character, how does that character come together for you normally?
That's a really tricky question. I get asked that a lot, and I never quite know how to answer it. Characters tend to come to me kind of fully formed, and I don't know why or how that happens. I think it's just the way my brain works. You know, that
you visualize them.
I visualize them. I know a lot about them, and they do tend to come as all part and parcel of the story. Sometimes if a smaller character might need some conscious constructing, but on the whole, it's like Catherine Cawood in Happy Valley. It's really interesting because I can't remember any effort to construct that character. You know, it was very much. I knew Sarah was going to play her very early on. That was the kind of thing because I wanted to write something else for Sarah, so I could see her straight away. So that was easy. And then I met Lisa Farrand, who was my police advisor on the show, and she had some inputs, right, in terms of just listening to her talk and listening to her experiences. But other than that, I don't consciously construct characters.
Do you ever get stuck with how they might react in a particular situation, or again, does that all just flow very naturally?
No, I think it flows naturally. I think because as well, I've come to realise over the years, I think all your characters are a version of yourself, or a version of the self you'd like to be. I think often in my case, certainly with a character like Catherine, you know, I wish I could be that, you know, dynamic and exciting and flawed.
Okay. I mean, and you've obviously you've based the you've based Anne around in Lost Tango in Halifax, around your mother.
Celia, yeah.
Celia, sorry, not Anne, Celia, yeah, sorry. Was she happy or concerned about this?
My mum was thrilled. She was thrilled that I'd dramatised her, what had happened to her, because this was, you know, it happened. She met someone online that she'd been at school with 60 years ago, and they fell in love with each other and they got married. So it was a really wonderful thing to witness for me, you know, to watch, because she was just so happy. But then, you cast people, and she loved the show. She was thrilled with the show, but she'd often say things like, "I didn't say that." And, no, but I think she was very pleased with Annie.
And does she watch now? Does she read your scripts?
The last series that's just been on this year, season 5, is the first time she's not been able to, you know, she just doesn't know that it's been
tough for you.
It is upsetting, because she's always been, you know, she's always followed my career, and she's always watched everything I've written. You know, she would have given me the best feedback, because she doesn't. I know she won't tell me something's good if it isn't. So it was quite sad that it was a show about her, and that it'd been so successful, and that it was about this wonderful thing that had happened to her.
Yeah.
And then this was the first time she hasn't been able to watch it. So yes, it was rather poignant.
Yeah. And are there other people, other women in your life that inspire characters? Do you think, and do people often say to you, "Is that person based on me?"
Yeah, that has happened a couple of times, and then a couple of times it hasn't been based on that person, or not consciously so on my part anyway. And then I have another friend who I take a lot of influence from. She pops up in different shapes. I never take one person lock, stock and barrel and dramatise them. But I've got I've got a few friends actually who are quite just dramatic things seem to happen to them.
Yeah.
But I've got
Perfect,
a friend in particular
perfect materials then.
whose life is just rife with drama, and she sort of inspires me a lot.
But so much of what you write is sort of everyday drama, albeit with sort of complex characters and plot twists and so on. Presumably that's a relatively conscious choice, that sort of desire to write, you know, reality, for want of a sort of better term. Is that right? Is that conscious?
I don't know whether it's conscious or not. As I said, my imagination doesn't seem to click in if what I'm writing doesn't feel real, or if it's funny, or if something feels a bit cheesy or sentimental. I can't go there. My brain just won't engage. So I have to persevere until I know a scene feels authentic.
Yeah.
You know, it's I suppose it's your instinct. But I remember right from starting to write, you know, trying to be more serious about writing in my sort of late teens. I became very conscious of the fact that I could only write things if they felt they were part of the real world somehow. I don't think I could write. I could write sci-fi, but it would be very down to earth sci-fi.
Real sci-fi.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of comedy in your writing as well, but it's sort of very natural comedy, and even in, as you said at the beginning, even in sort of darker places like Happy Valley. Do you ever think you'd write straight comedy?
I'd have a go at writing some straight comedy. Actually, I just worry that I have got this dark side and but that's no part of comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Julia Davis; she's fantastic. She writes the darkest, and Michelle Horgan. You know, there's some really dark stuff in comedy. So now I would like to have a crack at writing. Straight. Is it ever that straight? I don't know, but yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you wrote with Sarah Lancashire in mind, particularly for Happy Valley. Do you often write with a particular actor in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I am. My mind is very visual. I picture what I'm writing as I write it. I don't know if all writers do that. They probably do, but I think that's why I've always wanted to direct as well. I do just see things very clearly when I write them, and so if you have people in mind, whether they end up playing that part or not, ultimately. I just find it helps. It helps, you know, if you're very familiar with their voice and their mannerisms. It's just a part of that visualization, and it just helps you. I think it kind of gives you freedom with it. Oddly, even though it sounds like it shouldn't, because you've pinned it down to one person.
Yeah,
it gives you a freedom to imagine. Yeah, I suppose it takes it out. It takes it out away from you. It puts it onto someone else, so you can be more free with that. I suppose it's like if you're using someone else's voice almost. So maybe it's like wearing a mask, where you're less inhibited.
And Scott and Bailey was a sort of first move. Well, it was your first of your well, no, not the first of your original projects, but it was the first cop drama that you wrote, and then obviously Happy Valley after that.
Yeah.
Why the interest in sort of cop drama, and would you go back there again?
I wasn't particularly interested in cop drama. I'd when I wrote Scott and Bailey, I think that was about 2011. So I'd been writing my original stuff from 1999 with the Braithwaites, and I kind of prided myself up to that point on not having written a cop drama ever, because it seemed to be like such a big part of the output, particularly ITV. It was like all they did were thrillers and cop shows. So I was quite pleased by the fact that I'd made a career and not written a cop show. But then this opportunity came to do it, and what I wanted to do was to try and find a USP, something that gave a good reason to be making yet another cop show. And I was lucky enough to meet Diane Taylor, who was a detective inspector with the Greater Manchester Police Major Incident Team, and I met her socially. I wasn't particularly looking to write a show. It was just I think a friend introduced us because he thought that I would find her interesting.
Mm.
Sorry, I've got some cat hair in my mouth. Why? Got my cat here.
Cat can come in.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick flash of him. There he is.
Oh, fast asleep.
So I met Diane, and she talked about her job in a way that I'd never heard before. I'd never come across anything quite like what she was talking about. I'd watched a lot of cop dramas, and it was so different. What she was talking about was so different from what I felt I'd ever seen on television. The way she described, it's not about an inspector and he's got a sergeant sidekick and they solve everything together. A murder squad is a big team of 20, 30 people. I felt I'd never seen that on telly, although retrospectively I think Prime Suspect did that, and they did it really, really well. But it's the only cop show I realised that had actually done that really, really properly and really well, in a way that reflected how British police do things.
Yeah.
And it made me realise as well that a lot of cop shows were written, it was a sort of self-perpetuating myth about what the structure of the police is. That they were all, rather than actually talking to cops, there were just a lot of shows that emulated each other. But the USP for Scott and Bailey was introducing this major incident team. So it's Scott and Bailey are part of a bigger team, but it's just that we're looking at more closely at these two particular women who are part of this team.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic having Diane's inputs on the show, because this is what she'd done most of her career. She had worked solving murders, working on murder cases.
But that, I mean, you have said before that some of that research took you to an incredibly dark place, and you probably learned a lot more than you ever anticipated.
Yeah. It was, again, we wanted it to feel very real. We wanted it to reflect what solving murders is really like, which, again, there's a lot of TV. We make entertainment out of murder on TV a lot of the time, in the sort of Agatha Christie tradition of, whodunits, solving whodunits, middle-class murders. And what was, again, interesting really about working with Diane was it made me realise that, real murder isn't like that. Real murders are, very grim, and it's usually people who are drunk or have, something missing and aren't very bright and don't think things through. And that's the kind of the grim reality that became what the show was about, that kind of very real world. And I think by series 3, I was starting to feel quite depressed. It did depress. My mum rang me up and said, "You sound depressed," and I didn't think I was, but then because she'd said that, it made me go away and think about it, and I realised it was something about dealing with this material. And then I started writing Last Tango, and it was like just this absolute buzz of delight, and that really made me realise that it was the nature of the material that had quite an effect on me.
Would you go back there again?
I'd have to think hard about it. I mean, I don't know why Happy Valley doesn't quite have that same effect on me. I think it's a different show. We do look at dark things, but it's not that kind of story of the week thing that we were doing on Scott and Bailey, that was kind of quite relentlessly seeing a real, sad and dark side of human nature. And I think as well, Happy Valley has got quite a lot of humour in it. I think Scott and Bailey had some humour in it, but with Happy Valley, particularly the second series, I was really conscious of trying to make it as funny, because that character is funny, the sister's funny, to make it as funny as it is dark. So, I'm very proud of Scott and Bailey, and I'm glad I did it, and I enjoyed writing the script. But it was interesting to have gone through that. But I don't know that I wouldn't want to repeat it, in that I wouldn't put myself through that again, just because I wouldn't want to write another show that was too similar. But
We should go back to the beginning a little bit more of your career, because it's been such an extraordinarily long career. You started out, well, you wrote a play initially, but then you started out writing on the Archers and Coronation Street. But what are your, take us right back to the beginning. What are your first memories of writing, and when did you know that that was what you wanted to do? Was there a moment when you were like, this is obviously what I'm meant to do?
Yeah, there was. I'd written, I can't remember not writing, because I think as a child you write, you're encouraged to write stories at school, and me and my sister used to do a lot of that at home. We used to write stories and cartoon strips and all sorts like that. It was something that we just did a lot of. And I started, and I think that's why we wrote dialogue, because we wrote strip cartoons, and in strip cartoons that apart from drawing pictures, you're also writing dialogue. And I think it must have come out of that, to be honest. And then I just continued doing it because I liked it. I loved the idea of what people said to make stories. But then when I think I was 13 when Rock Follies of 77 was on. And that had a really profound effect on me. I remember watching this show, and it really, really excited me. And it made me, in the space of an hour, between 9 and 10 o'clock, the first time I saw it, I think it was like in the May of 1977. I just remember feeling something really so excited about this show, and tangibly thinking, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make television programs that are that exciting. And I mean, I didn't have a clue. I lived in Yorkshire. No TV got made in Yorkshire that I knew of in those days. Emmerdale probably did, but everything else was made in London. And it was. I had no idea how this was going to happen, but it was a very conscious. It was a very conscious feeling that I'd woken up and this was my life, and that's what I was going to do.
And how was it joining a team? Because obviously you were writing as part of a team on both of those. What was that experience like?
It was really interesting. I mean, I learned a heck of a lot, because I was predominantly working with writers who'd been there, particularly on Coronation Street. Some of those writers had been there 20, 30 years, and they were very, very skilled storytellers. And the great art of writing a soap is coming up with stories not that will last 6 weeks, but that will last months.
Yeah.
It's a real skill being able to do that. And there were probably only 2, 3, 4 people there who really knew how to do that, and it was just a delight listening to them. I mean, everybody helped. I didn't, because I didn't speak.
You didn't speak at all. Well, because you were so in awe of the experience in that room.
Yeah, I think I was, and I'm just shy, and I could write.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wrote the script.
Obviously.
But for the first 3 years, I didn't really contribute, which was a bit, it's not good for your self-esteem. But I couldn't. Yeah. So, but I did soak it all up, and I learned a lot.
There must have been moments where you were sitting there, even sort of quietly thinking, I really don't agree with that. How did you ever voice those thoughts?
No. I mean, there was nothing I necessarily disagreed with, because you could guarantee that if, as soon as you thought something, somebody else would pick up the ball and run with it. And if somebody, and better than me, because I'm not very verbal. I think that's why I write, because I'm not very verbally articulate. And the Archers was brilliant, because I learned a lot about agriculture, which I've always loved.
You're putting it to use now in the garden, right?
So that was great fun, and it was a really nice atmosphere at the Archers as well. It was a really pleasant introduction to the world of writing, and I had a different agent then, and she warned me that it wouldn't always be this pleasant, but I've never found it too unpleasant. I think that was when some of the soaps had a reputation for being quite scary.
But you were there. You were at Corrie for four years, wasn't it?
5 years. I started in 1994, and I left in 1999.
And why did you leave at that point?
I didn't really want to be honest, because I loved it. I loved working there, but the Braithwaites took off. It was really well received, and we got a second series. So I was turning up for meetings, and then I was never available to write.
Right.
And I think David Hanson was producing it at the time, and he said, if you left, we'd have room for someone else who could write around the table. So it was very kind about it, but it was, and also Carmela, who was kind of an unofficial mentor to me at that point in my life, said you don't stay there for more than 5 years. She said if you stay for more than 5 years, you'll never leave. And she was right. I think it was you know, it was a fantastic experience, but 5 years was a good time to leave. So I was
at Home with the Braithwaites. I mean, straight in at the top. That was an extraordinary first production. You set the bar pretty high coming out of Corrie. Was that? I mean, how was that to have your first original series just absolutely storm it from a ratings point of view, or from all points of view?
It was wonderful. It was a fantastic experience. It kind of spoiled me, because then when I had this, you know, we did 4 series. I wrote 3, and then I think there was a 4th series that I wasn't involved with. But then I had another series on the BBC called Spark House, which I was really happy with and really pleased about. And it nobody watched it, and it got not very good reviews, and I was really shocked, because I thought, oh, I didn't know that happened.
How important was that to you? How do you feel? Because obviously all forms of artwork, whether it's, you know, writing or paint or anything that goes out into the public domain is judged. How does that feel to you? Are awards important? Are reviews important? Do you listen to them?
I realise that is more normal, in that often you know, subsequent series that I wrote afterwards, after that, had mixed reviews, and you know, we've all written turkeys. It is hard, because you know, you put just as much effort into things that people don't get as you do the ones that people do get. So it is, and people say, oh, don't take it personally. Writing is personal. You know, you can't not take it personally. I used to worry that I made a fool of myself when I got upset about things and started shouting and swearing at people. But I now think it is personal, and you are going to get upset. So, you know, let rip.
Yeah. Do you shout and swear a lot?
Not as much as I used to. I think I'm getting more, I don't know.
But you know, after At Home with the Braithwaites, you know, you said you had Spark House, The Amazing Mrs. Pritchard, Dead Clever, Taming of the Shrew, Wife of Bath. I mean, it's you know, just to name a few of them. Have you ever had a break? Have you ever thought about having a break? Would you like a break?
I'm having one now. I mean, this is it. This is the first time I've had a break in about, certainly, I think I haven't had a proper break for about 4 years. Well, a holiday even. I don't think I took 6 months off in 2003. I think that was the only time I've had kind of proper.
And was that totally off? You weren't writing, or you were still writing in that time?
No, it was. I took time off and I just painted for 6 months. And I think it was because I'd done 3-4 series of the Braithwaites, then I'd done Spark House, and it was quite intense. And because Braithwaites had done very well, there was kind of a lot of pressure, and I felt like I was having a bit of a breakdown. I don't think I was, you know, I just got through it by painting. And then I got a tax bill, so I realised I had to go back to work. So that's the
reality of life.
And kind of since then, no, the thing is, I love writing, I love work. So even if, you know, somebody said, oh, you've got to have a break now, I'd probably, you know, be 5 minutes and I'd be wandering back to my desk.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I write to relax, and it's great therapy. So.
And yeah, you've described yourself as being, in some ways, you didn't use this word, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, sort of quite solitary. Like you like being on your own, you like your own company. But how do you like others to contribute to your work? Like what's a good note? What's a good commissioner relationship or producer relationship?
I think for me, it works best when I'm trusted to get on with it, and given enough rope to hang myself with. You know, that so I can. Just take risks and push things as far as they'll go, and that kind of thing. I think people trust me now. They know that I do actually put the hours in and turn the scripts in, and that they're usually, you know, quite good. So I do get that freedom But for me, the best notes are notes that are very focused and very well thought through. And, you know, I hate it when this doesn't happen anymore, but in the past that people come and give you like 50 notes, and that's awful. You know, what you want is 2 or 3 really salient notes that you can really do something with. And I tend to edit as I go along. So I start writing scene 1, and then when I go on to scene 2, I reread and reread and reread scene 1. Then I write scene 2. Then I reread both scene 1 and scene 2, and I'll go through the script like that. So by the time I'm on scene 56, I'll have reread and rewritten all the previous scenes so many times that I'm sure a lot of writers work like that, but for me, it's like building a wall, and if the foundation is not right, I know the wall isn't going to work. So it's about keeping rereading and reconstructing all the time to make sure everything's as solid as it can be. So by the time I hope there won't be any notes at all. I really don't like notes. So you know, so I take the responsibility of trying to make it perfect before I hand it in.
Is there any project where notes have made you literally go back and take apart all of those building blocks and start again? Or does it tend to be more a case of refining? Never.
No, never. I mean, sometimes you get a really good note that changes a lot of things. Well, not a lot of things usually, but sometimes you get a really good note that I had a really good note last week, actually. Somebody gave me a really fantastic note last week on episode 6 of Gentleman Jack. And it just really made one scene so much better, this one note. I think I'd got the tone of the scene wrong. And it was Saran Jones, actually. She said, I think she should be frightened in this scene. And it was like, oh my God, I'd never thought of that. And it just changed so much about this scene. So it wasn't actually a massive rewrite. In fact, I think I took lines out of it rather than put lines in, but it just gave it so much more levels of meaning by this one note. So it's very good to. It's a real skill giving notes, I think, as well. I think good script editors are really like gold dust, and I think they're actually very rare. Really good script editors.
Is that, again, part of the reason why you think you tend to work with the same people in sort of on recurring projects, because you know who you work well with, you know who gets you?
I think it's good to develop relationships so that you can trust someone's notes. Or if somebody you trust gives you a note you don't agree with, you think, well, I trust this person, so maybe I should think about this note a bit more.
Yeah,
if I don't agree with it. So, it's good to be able to have relationships with people who you can trust.
Yeah. So you've mentioned a couple of times then, we haven't come on to it yet, sort of Anne Lister, and I know this is one of the projects of which you're most proud. In fact, I think you said the other day that you feel like your whole career has been building up to writing this project. Tell us a bit more about how it came about, and what about Anne captures your imagination so much?
Well, I've always been aware of Anne Lister because I grew up in Halifax, so visiting Shibden Hall was always a thing I did right from being little. But I got the first real big hit of who Anne Lister was when I read Jill Lidington's book, which I think I read about. It came out in 1998, so I must have read it about the same time that I was writing The Braithwaites. And right from that point, I wanted to dramatise her. So I think in 2002, 2003 was the first time I was pitching the idea to broadcasters, and to it's gone through about 3 different production companies since before it actually hit the screen.
Oh, okay.
So it's been there for a long time, and so right from starting writing The Braithwaites to now, when it's actually become a TV show, it's always been there, and I've always been working on the diaries, working on transcriptions, working on pitch documents for what the show should be. So it's people often ask me what my favourite show is that I've ever made, and the truth is it's always the last show you've done, because it's the one that's uppermost in your mind, and it's the one that you've just spent a lot of time working on, so it's just very there in your thoughts. But I suppose for me, I'm so proud of Happy Valley. I'm so proud of everything I've ever done, but it's just the fact that it's been there for so long, this project, and that Anne Lister is my she's just my hero, I suppose. So to get to write and direct a show about somebody who's had such a profound effect on you is,
yeah.
And then to present it to the world, and then for it to be, it was well received, generally, but it was. Yeah. It also there's this whole community of women out there now that's built up around Gentleman Jack, and they're organising an Anne Lister birthday weekend, which was meant to happen this year, but it's been postponed. Yeah. But there's thousands of women involved in this group who have all become massive Anne Lister fans.
Who never would have heard of her had you not brought those
would never have heard of her. And they're from all over the world. I've had letters from Russia, South Africa, loads from America, China, Australia. I've never had so much, and very heartfelt. These women who just can't believe that they've never heard of this woman, and who, for them to realise they have a history as gay women, and for this very magnificent woman to have been this sort of role model that they never knew was there. I think it's been really profound for a lot of people. I know it has. I've had such emotional responses. I've met so many friends, people, I've got two particular friends who've come over from America who've now done a lot of work on Anne Lister, and they're intending to do a lot more. And it's been really uplifting, actually. It's been really, it feels like I've actually done something important rather than just, make stuff up.
And how many of her diaries are there? How much more material is there?
She wrote 26 volumes.
Wow. Okay.
Which are, in each volume there's approximately 325, 350 pages. It's very densely packed writing. So that we think there's about 5 million words.
Wow. Okay, a lot of material.
Compared to Pepys, who wrote about 1.5 million words. So this is a significant diary, and it really should be as famous as Pepys, and I think she probably is going to be now.
You're directing on Gentleman Jack as well. Tell me a bit about directing and the move there. How did that come about?
Well, I've always wanted to direct. I directed at university, and as well as wanting to write, but I guess the writing took off, and the directing kind of got left by the wayside, and then as I started to get my own original stuff done, it didn't occur to me. I thought if you were a director, you'd been trained somehow to do that, rather than just say, oh, I want to direct now, which is essentially what they do and what I did. You can get trained, of course, but a lot of them haven't. I mean, some people I know, like a lot of art directors, have just been to art school rather than being on dedicated TV directing courses.
How do you find it juggling the two, writing and directing?
It's
like
hard.
Ultimate power.
It's hard. It's it is. For me, it's about. I often get frustrated when directors miss details that I know I wouldn't have missed. So I have worked with some really fantastic directors, and I've learned a lot from them. But there's always something that falls by the wayside that it has been very important to me when I've been writing it, and that a director has just either not, misunderstood or not noticed. So it's always been important. It's always something I wanted to do. So finally, but it's difficult. I had two boys, and when they were growing up, it was difficult to be away from home in the consistent way that you have to be when you direct. And it is very, very hard work. It's physically hard, and it's mentally hard, and it's psychologically hard as well. You have to be very tough.
Mm-hmm. But you think this is something that you would like to do some more of?
Definitely, I'd like to do some more of. I'm not going to be able to direct the second series of Gentleman Jack. It's purely because of logistics.
Yeah.
If I'm directing, I'm not writing, and it's a very hard show to write. It takes twice as long to write as it does anything else. So the logistics of series 2 means that I'm gonna be across it. I'm gonna showrun it, and I'm gonna be a lot more hands-on than I would normally be as a writer.
Gentleman Jack's also, obviously through HBO, had a huge amount of US interest as well. Is the US a sort of a place that you'd be interested in spending more time? Have you ever thought about leaving behind our fair isles for the Hollywood lights?
I've thought about it, and I've had a few offers, but I do come back to the idea that I love writing British telly. I love writing in my own vernacular, and I do think American culture is significantly different to ours. I think it's different in obvious ways, and I think it's different in very subtle ways as well. And I think to write, again, it does come down to authenticity for me. I'm sure I could have a crack at it and get away with it, but I wouldn't want to get away with it. I want to write scripts that work on, that have depth and resonance. And if you're imitating a voice, which I think I would be if I'd be imitating Americanisms, I don't know that it would feel real. I think you can sniff it out when an English person's written an American script. And as soon as I sniff it out, I think, oh, this isn't real. This isn't written by somebody in an authentic voice. But having said that, I have got to a stage where I'd like to do something else. I'd like to challenge myself to do something else, whether that's write for theatre or write for film or direct for theatre or film. I've got to a stage where I would like to just push things a bit further.
Have you got particular projects you're working on in those spaces?
I've got a couple of film projects tickling about. I've got a couple of theatres that have come to me asking if I'd like to write for stage, which I would. It's just finding time. I've got about 10 projects on my books at the moment, and I can only work on one at once. My brain doesn't do more than one at once. And so it's literally finding time. Again, this is why I can't direct this time. I've got too many stories I want to tell, and it's balancing things up. It's finding a balance and making it all work.
There's a couple of questions coming in that I'll ask in a moment, but just before I do so, I just wanted to sort of ask, there's probably a lot of people listening who are sort of, writers themselves at various sort of career stages. How much do you think sort of success is sort of luck versus talent versus perseverance in writing?
I think it's different things at different stages in your life. I always think I've been very lucky, but I have also been very persistent. I'm not, when I was younger, I'm less so now, but when I was younger, I was very shy, but I was never shy about sending my scripts out. I was never shy about knocking on doors. I was never shy about making a nuisance of myself and making people read my scripts because I was driven to do it. And I do work really hard. I get up at 5 o'clock every day because I want to. I love getting up at 5 o'clock every day, especially when the weather's like this. But I get up to work because I want to work. So I think, I know it sounds a bit glib, but I do think you make your own luck. So it is probably partly luck, but it might be luck that you've made yourself by, and I do feel driven. I feel like I'm compelled to write. So I'm lucky in that sense.
Someone here has asked, how do you deal with making decisions in terms of a story when working on an original script? They're saying they sometimes find themselves overwhelmed with ideas for the way a story could unfold, and they get a bit paralysed by it.
Yeah, the thing with writing a script is you're making decisions all the time. There are 1,001 decisions to make on every page, and I think the thing is to have to work from a really good to do a scene breakdown, to have a really detailed plan. So you're making a lot of those decisions before you embark on the script. So that if you've got a really good scene breakdown, you make those decisions at that stage, which are the right, hopefully you'd know which were the right decisions, because then you'll end up with a nice consistent narrative with a beginning, a middle and an end. It's just instinct. It's being able to trust your own instincts, and that comes about through experience of just doing the job, just making your stories work, spending time making your stories work.
Do you think starting out and all the experience you had on the soaps was a good place for that?
Oh yeah, without doubt. As I say, I mean, as characters come pretty readily to me, and dialogue, I find very easy. It's like drawing. I think it's something you can just do or not do, and I can just do it. Whereas story, I think, is really hard. I think story you have to really work at, and that was what was fantastic about working on a team like at Coronation Street or like the Archers, where you've got 8 or 15 people in a room, bashing ideas around, and everybody except me, obviously, contributing to that and throwing ideas in. So that yeah, I mean, I think it's a fantastic place to start. It always makes me laugh when I meet young people and they want to work in Hollywood and they think writing soaps is a pile of junk, and you just think you don't know anything.
Have you got any advice for young producers looking to find a way into the industry?
Producers?
Yeah. It's another question.
Gosh, I've never been asked that before. Young producers? I don't know. I suppose to get in touch with people whose work they like, to look out to identify who makes the things that you like watching. Look out for names of people, and to make relationships with them, get in touch with them, get talking to them.
Do you think networking and the relationships that you sort of built early on have been important to where you are today? Yeah. Okay, well look, Sally, I think we're roughly out of time now, but thank you. You've been incredibly generous with your time and incredibly open and honest, and we're extremely lucky to have had you. So thank you, and very best of luck with the second series of Gentleman Jack. I think most people on this call are waiting with bated breath for that. So yeah, so good luck, and good luck with the vegetable growing as well.
Oh, cool, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.